Nintendo just released an Ask the Developer interview for Mario Kart World, and it is quite a thing. It reveals so much interesting information about the game that I just had to talk about it in a video. So yeah, naturally, go read the whole thing if you want all of the details, but I've kind of collected what I feel are the more interesting little tidbits, and let's talk about them. It's really quite revealing. I'm already working on a video specifically just talking about the fact that the game was originally going to be a Switch 1 game. That, to me, was interesting enough for an entire video, so I'm not going to go into the entire thing here. I'll give you like a quick recap. Basically, they began prototyping this game March 2017. Basically, the exact very beginning of the Switch generation. The Switch launched, and they already started working on Mario Kart World, and they felt that they had already fully explored the idea of racing on individual, segmented courses. And so, from the beginning, basically, they wanted to go open world. They wanted to do something new with the game. They wanted one big world where everything was connected. And similarly, early on, they knew that they wanted to have 24 players. Because the world was so big, I guess it would make the players seem small. It would just make it seem like there were, it would make the racers seem a little more insignificant compared to these really big environments. So that's another thing they wanted pretty much from the beginning. They wanted to have a lot more people racing in this place, but they were having a really, really hard time making that happen on the Switch hardware, which is naturally, not super surprising. And they were looking at all of these different corners they might be able to cut. They were thinking about lowering the resolution, making the game just kind of look less good. At one point, they were even considering lowering the frame rate to 30 FPS, which would have been really not great. That would have really not, I don't know. I don't think that would have turned out very well. So in 2020, they decided to do the Booster Course Pass for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and it was at that point that they decided, hey, let's just move development over to the Switch 2. We will have extra processing power, and we will also have extra time to work on the game. But again, that's like the short version of the story, so if you haven't watched my other video on the whole entire thing, then go do that if you want. No pressure. But let's move on to some of the other interesting details. As for the look of the game, with Mario Kart 8, they leaned into a much more sleek and futuristic style, especially with the whole anti-grav thing. They wanted the game to kind of look cool, and you even see right there on the cover, Mario himself. He's he's got that serious racing look. And so with Mario Kart World, they wanted to make a game that better, visually better represented Mario and his friends, all of the Mario characters. They are very colorful and very lively, kind of, round. There is nothing sleek about Mario characters, and so they wanted to they wanted to better represent Mario characters here, and I think that's really fascinating because you can even see that from a gameplay perspective. They've done the same thing. I talked about that a bunch in other videos. The fact that they've introduced all of these new ways for the cart to kind of jump and move around. You can do a boost jump and you can wall jump, and just the cart itself is now this bouncy, jumpy kind of thing. And yeah, that to me better represents Mario driving in a car. That is a more pure version of Mario driving in a car. So I think it's really interesting to hear them talk about visually as well. They just wanted to make everything a little bit rounder, a little bit more playful and colorful, and not just the characters, but the carts themselves. They are rounder, the wheels are chunkier, in this little image here, it even mentions a more handcrafted kind of look about it. And then they talk about the inclusion of all of these new racers, and it's really funny because if I had to guess, I would have said that they just, I don't know, they already had a lot of different characters. They wanted to dig a little deeper. You've got 24 players now, so they just naturally need a lot more characters. So, what do? You dip into all the baddies. You've had Koopa Troopa before, so why would you not be able to play as, any Mario baddie? So I kind of thought that would just be kind of an obvious decision. But apparently, this was all kind of thanks to the cow. Like it started with the cow. Let me just read the quote here. Each new Mario Kart game features new characters to race with, but since we added so many to the previous game, we wondered where we could go from here. And then one of the designers came up with that silly sketch of cow cruising along, and I thought to myself, this is it. So that's when we realized the course surroundings actually contained a lot of untapped resources. The character designer quickly put together a prototype of cow that could race, and surprisingly, it didn't feel out of place at all. So we thought maybe we could include other obstacle characters and decided to add Cheep Cheep and Pokey as racers. As a result, the idea of taking obstacle characters, usually found in courses in past games, and having them participate in races made sense to me in terms of an interconnected world. And I think it's interesting because to me, I see these other characters. Sure, the cow is a Mario Kart thing, but the rest of them, they're just Mario baddies. They are broadly Mario baddies, but here they were looking at it more in terms of like Mario Kart obstacle characters, like characters seen on the sidelines, wandering around on the tracks and kind of getting in your way. And so yeah, like I was kind of wondering, which baddies do you go with? If you're racing as a bunch of baddies, which ones do you grab? Over the course of all these Mario games, we've had a lot of baddies, a lot of classic ones, and I guess this is it. This is your answer right there. It's ones that have, I mean, I haven't like looked at each one and like verified that each one has been in Mario Kart, but it seems to be that yes, like all of the characters that you can race as were ones that were found specifically in Mario Kart. So that's cool. That's a really cool little insight. And I love to see that it started with the cow. And like, I don't know, it's video games, they're so interesting, and Mario games, they're very mystical things. Sometimes we imagine that these decisions were like divined by like these, I don't know, these forces, these entities. You know, you go up to the mountain and you consult the Mario Kart wizard or whatever, and they figure like, oh yes, we're gonna have all of these other characters. It's gonna be great. But like, nah, they're just people messing around. You know, somebody just drew a sketch of the cow in a cute little truck, and they were just like, that's it. That's it. Like that was the light bulb moment that led to being able to race as the cow, and then subsequently all of these other Mario baddies. And I just think that is really fascinating. And I love that they did it. I don't know, that was a very interesting and playful and kind of, I don't know, meme-like decision. I don't know, it's awesome. Moving on, the decision to include food in the game, it seems that pretty early on, they wanted to have food, but they didn't like definitively decide that they were going to do it until like a couple years into development. It seems that they were just kind of like struggling to make it work, struggling to decide if it was really like worth doing. They were kind of on the verge of giving up, but they were unable to let it go. And it seems that, of course, it was the burger that kind of sealed the deal. Jikumaru had created a hamburger model and asked the programmers to implement it just so they could see how it worked. And apparently it really clicked. It was another light bulb moment. They just like, you know, you see a Mario Kart character eating a burger. I mean, I can imagine seeing that and being I was sold when I first saw it. It was a magical moment. You know, you look at iconic moments in Nintendo history, Link coming out of the cave and going up to the plateau and like looking out over Hyrule, or like Mario coming out of the warp pipe into the castle gardens in Mario 64. A Mario Kart character whipping out a burger and eating it, like that's something special right there. So apparently from there they started making new food, and yeah, it finally worked for them. They decided to go forward with making it a feature. So back to the format of the game and its courses. You know, they mentioned the naming of Mario Kart World instead of Mario Kart 9, and they said like if we went into this with the plan to just make another Mario Kart game and just put more courses, then yes, we probably would have made it Mario Kart 9, which is interesting because like I thought it was going to be 9, but then I like slowly warmed up to the idea that Tour kind of counted, you know, like that game really did have a lot of original content. It really does just kind of seem like an actual more or less full-blown Mario Kart, you know, maybe smaller in a way because it's a mobile game, but like, yeah, it would not have surprised me if they just called it 10. But here, he says no, like it would have been 9. But of course, they wanted to do something much bigger, much more original, and I completely agree that that was the right choice. The name Mario Kart World definitely communicates what this game is going for. And it is at this point where the rest of the interesting stuff to talk about is basically just kind of going on about how humongous of an undertaking this game actually was. And it feels funny whenever I say this, but like, I've been trying not to look at a lot of footage of this game because I don't want quote-unquote spoilers, and I know that that's silly, but like, to me, the single most interesting part about this game is like, it's kind of the connective tissue. I want to know what it's like to drive out of one course and into another one, and just to like, I don't know, I want to see it for myself. I want to experience what it is like. I don't even quite get how they did it. How do you take one, move to the other, and have the landscape kind of transition in a natural way that feels right, that doesn't just, and they mentioned it in the interview, they didn't want it to just be courses all kind of plonked down and connected with just a bunch of like nothing, you know, you're just kind of like driving in a straight line to get there. They say it was like really hard to connect these tracks without losing what makes the individual tracks special. You know, they didn't want to like make them too plain to make it easier to connect them together. They wanted the connective tissue itself to feel worth it. So to me, that's always been the biggest mystery and the biggest thing that I really want to experience for myself. You know, like all of the actual racing and the game modes, it's almost unimportant to me. I am just so fascinated by the idea that I'm watching this trailer footage and they are in like a mountainous, icy place, and then they're in a desert, and then they're in the water, knowing that there is that natural connective tissue between them. There are seamless transitions between them. I mean, obviously, it'll be more seamless. You don't go straight from the ice place to the desert place. But even that, like, that's a part of the fun. How do you lay all this stuff out in a way that feels natural? And so it's really, really fun to hear everything they have to say about all this and how difficult it was. Like, it has to look good, and it has to feel natural, and like I said, it has to not diminish the quality of the courses themselves, but then similarly, the space in between the courses, that also has to be interesting. It can't just be empty. The spaces between the courses are kind of like their own courses. And they say that, like, you know, there's like however many, like, I can't remember exactly how many main courses there are, but they say that if you count the places between the courses that are basically kind of like courses in themselves, you're looking at something like over 100 tracks in this game. And especially if you're just like messing around with your friends, you know, really you can race in any of them. And that's why I'm really, really hoping, I know I did a whole like video on it or whatever, but like I really am hoping that the whole like, oh, you know, you're collecting the blue coins or like whatever there's like P switches and stuff. And I really hope they utilize that a lot, because if it is true that this game kind of has over 100 courses, some of them are kind of smaller connective tissue stuff, like, use it, you know, give us a reason to use it, and instead of just racing from one track to another, give us like little challenges that we can do, maybe even give us ways to do legitimate races with our friends. Hey, this stretch between this course and this course, can we just like race on that? And, you know, of course you can like casually race with friends wherever you want, but like, I don't know, it'd be nice if there was like an actual system for making it happen, but whatever. So they wanted to make all that stuff feel worth it, but then they also needed to make it pretty obvious how to navigate these places and how to find your way between the courses without like checking a map all the time. So they had to include a lot of like visual cues, you know, like really subtle visual cues that kind of let you know which way you need to turn, or like visible landmarks to help you along. Like there's so much that went into the design process of this game, both like how to how to make it look good, how to make it feel good, and then even just like psychologically, you know, how to lead the player along, how to make it feel natural so that people wouldn't like get lost and frustrated and just want to like fast travel or something. I really like this quote here. In previous Mario Kart games, the courses were separate and could only be viewed one by one, but now they look different depending on the angle, time of day, and mode you're playing. We've packed a lot of details into them. And so, yeah, again, I just want to see how it works. Like what happens when you like drive behind a course and you view it like from this angle? It's completely different, you know, like regular old Mario Kart game, you're on this linear course, you're on this track, and you only need to program like visually what can be seen from the track itself at any point on the track. Now you are designing all of this stuff. You're programming it, all the art and everything, to be viewed from any angle, and it's just amazing. And then on top of just like the terrain and how it looks, there's the time and there's the weather. You know, it changes from day to night, and the weather changes. And this was where it started to feel like totally overwhelming for the team. Let me just read a bunch of the quotes here. We were under no illusion. We were even on the verge of giving up on it at one point. Like, it was so much extra work, they almost had to just throw the idea out. They say it was even worse than we imagined. But the graphics programmers were also determined to create something good and worked ambitiously to make it happen, rallying support from various people. The programmers were also worried about how they were going to work together to handle this volume of content. We knew what we wanted to do, but the big challenge was working out how we could actually complete it. That said, we thought it might be possible if we could change our development approach in a way that reduces the workload. So, like, yeah, even just implementing the weather and time mechanic was, like, huge. They had to, like, rethink how they were doing things. They had to get as much help as they possibly could. And there's even a whole thing where they talk about, like, the waves in the water, when you're racing on the water, how the waves work and how they work in, like, real time and how the enemies can create waves. And it's just, like, they really had a lot of work to do. And this right here is where it becomes obvious that this really was such a massive undertaking. And here's the thing. I'm not gonna like defend the $80 price point or anything. You know, as I've been saying, I'm kind of done with that whole conversation. I'm not trying to like justify it. However, I have seen a lot of people in response to the whole $80 thing try to like downplay how big of a thing this game is, how big of an evolution it is, as a way to try to like make the price tag feel even less worth it, make it feel even more ridiculous. But like wherever you stand on the $80 price tag, whatever, it really cannot be overstated how big of a thing this was. I mean, they started prototyping 8 years ago, for Pete's sake. They've been working on this for so long. They had so many ideas. They were genuinely afraid they were going to have to just get rid of a bunch of them. When we do not develop games ourselves, sometimes we can't really see how impressive or ambitious a game is. But like, just based on everything they're saying here, even just based on what we've seen of the game, it really was an enormous, enormous undertaking. And they didn't really have to do it all. They could have done Mario Kart 9. They could have just given us new courses and new items or whatever, new characters, and it still would have sold really, really well. And I really admire that they went into this project with such ambitious goals, such cool ideas, completely reinventing how the courses work, how they are made, how they look, how they have to be programmed. And they stuck with it. And like, obviously there could be ideas that they're not telling us about that they had to ditch. But even what we have here, it is a lot. They really have done a tremendous amount. And I think that's awesome. I think it's fantastic. They did spend a lot of time and money on this game. It has to have been a tremendous amount. This really is Mario Kart's Breath of the Wild moment. You know, when the series is just absolutely blown up, takes on epic proportions, and I'm excited to play it. I don't know. I guess that's really the point. That's really what I want to say. They worked on the game for 8 stinking years, and they were like not even sure they could do it. They were literally unsure if they could handle this workload, and they managed to do it, and it took them that long. And now here we are. We've got this really big Mario Kart game. But that's basically it for the highlights. That's all the stuff that I wanted to talk about. This video is running very, very long, so I'm just gonna end it right here.